Hey everybody, what's going on? We're doing top reads of 2024. Now, I've done a top 10 video before, and I think a lot of people liked it. Now, there's going to be some carryover from that video to this one. Before I get into my top 10, I'm going to do some honorable mentions. And before I even do that, I want to let you guys know if you are here for my usual weekly updates at the end of this video after I finish my top 10, I'll just run you guys through what's going on with my editor and my edits for my book. Other than that, let's get right into the honorable mentions. So, for 2024, I did a lot of fantasy. So you're going to see a lot of fantasy on this list. And I also did a decent amount of sci-fi for myself. That said, let's dive in for the first honorable mention. I'm going to say the heroes. I'm not going to put covers on the screen. I'm sorry. I love watching that, so I know how annoying it probably is for you guys to see it and not see the covers. The covers that I do have on me on hand, I will be showing you. But the heroes I did on audio because it's a Joe Abercrombie book, absolutely phenomenal. Of the standalones that I read this year, I did read Best of Cold, I did read the heroes, and I did read. I'm started Red Country. The heroes so far, with having not finished Red Country, is top of the list for me. Even though I loved all of it, like I loved Best of Cold, loved it, loved all the characters in that. Obviously, it's Joe Abercrombie. How are you going to not like the characters? Then we have The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. It should be higher on this list. I think if I physically read it, this was a listen as well. I would have gotten more enjoyment out of it, which makes me think going into The Blackest Heart that I'm going to be like reading it physically and then also listening to it, which is something that I started doing with my books as far as reading goes. I gotten immersive with it, so to say. And then we have All the Pretty Horses, which so the rules of this list, as I'm vaguely getting into this completely unorganized video, I will not say an author twice, with the exception of Cormac McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses, and because it's an honorable mention. And then I'll likely honorably mention the other books in the series that I read this year as I go. So with the exception of that, as far as my ranking is concerned, and again, any of these can slot it in out of my top 10 at any moment, but this is just a current ranking. The way as I sit here in this chair right now for you, in front of you, this is what you're getting. So All the Pretty Horses I'll mention. I actually thoroughly enjoyed that book, and I started Blood Meridian, didn't quite finish it, although there's another Cormac book in the top 10 that if you saw my other top 10 video, you'll know which one that is. And then we have Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. Now, I read Red Rising, Golden Sun, and Morning Star, and Iron Gold this year. Golden Sun, of those four books, is my absolute favorite. I will probably be getting into Dark Age come like February, March time, just to dive back into the series. That said, Golden Sun just stood out amongst all of them, I think, significantly. The ending was absolutely brutal, and it is just an absolute, it's honestly pretty easy to digest. Characters were really well done. And then, everybody, if you've read the series, your boy Severo just kind of got after it. So I love Golden Sun. Thought it was great. And then we had Riven Earth, which was a surprise. I honestly wasn't expecting to read it going into the year. Didn't know it existed. I think it released in June or July. Zammar Ahmer, this is an excellent book. It's a duology. The second book is called Sundered Moon. Between the two, I like the first more than the second. That said, I still love the second. You have a lot of great high fantasy elements that come out in the second book. The first book was a deep dive for me as far as a character study goes, into really seeing the arcs of the characters that he wrote. And also you see that the things going into the second book that you end up getting turned on their head. And it's really cool to experience that, meeting these characters for the first time. A lot of Joe Abercrombie influence, a lot of Brandon Sanderson, like world building influence. And Zammar Ahmer, we did an interview with him over on my buddy Alex at Iskandaria's channel. And it was really great to talk to him, emailed with him a couple times. And yeah, he's a great dude. Honestly, great series, a great duology. And I can't wait to see what else he has in store, because the writing style actually fits me really well. So that's the honorable mentions. I'm going to dive into number 10 now. As well, we get into this list, just know I'm sure there's some things that I left off that you guys probably would enjoy. Let's say like Fourth Wing, for example. That might be something that maybe I did read it, and maybe it's just not in the top 10, but it's still a good story, right? We can all acknowledge that. So let's dive in. We're going to go with We Are the Dead at number 10. Now, this one I just recently read, and so we have some recency bias here for sure. Now, by the way, I pinned these in order for myself, so I didn't screw it up. So hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Definitely missing. Oh, there's 10. There's 10 there. Okay. So yes, We Are the Dead. This is my first Mike Shackle experience. It was a total homage, right? The right way to say it, to homage to Joe Abercrombie in a lot of ways. That said, the grimdark aspects of this book, I felt like this was closer to epic/high fantasy than a Joe Abercrombie's grimdark would be. There's a lot of humor in this, but there's a lot of self-discovery and self-exploration. Typically that voice that we talk to ourselves with, but I think there is a clear line between good and evil in this book. Again, myself and Bearded Book Beast, Chris at Bearded Book Beast, Jake at Nerd Level Rising, and Alex at Iskandaria did a discussion of this book, going into full spoilers. If you guys want to see more of that, I can link the video in the description below. Bear with me as I finish the description stuff, figuring all that out as I go too. But yeah, this was not a surprise. I just am more so surprised about how much I loved it. I knew I was going to love it. I didn't know how much I was going to love it. And this book was absolutely fantastic. The character work is so well done. You guys, if you're into, I mean, let's speak objectively about what the book is. It's an occupation. It felt very much like a World War II type occupation, and it's a rebellion kind of going up against it. And there's stakes of the world versus, and it's incredible. I highly recommend this book. If you haven't already picked it up, We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle. Now I'm going to slot books over there. That's okay as we go. Next on the list, we have The Stand by Stephen King. Now, it's not the only Stephen King book I read this year. I read The Gunslinger, started the Dark Tower series, and I plan on continuing that series as time goes on. My mom actually picked this copy up for me at like a red, white, and blue. Look at that, a little red and black. I mean, obviously, that's my favorite color combination. So, yes, The Stand. This book was a fantastic, again, character explanation. It's exploration. It's Stephen King. He really dives into the heads of a post-apocalyptic world that was destroyed by a super flu. This is a very popular story that there have been adaptations on, and the book stands up to everything. There's obviously some Stephen King stuff that goes on in this one in terms of just like out of the park, stuff is the best way I can explain it. And I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I really did. I mean, it's in the top 10. This is the writing that Stephen King, I mean, it stands the test of time. His ability to weave together a narrative and a storyline and make everything come together at the end was very, very, very well done in this. I think that's one of the reasons why this book is so highly touted. And then, of course, just falling in love with the characters and then flipping and subverting expectations. The Stand was a fantastic read for me this year. Now, we have The Way of Edan by Philip Chase. This was also kind of a surprise with how much I enjoyed it. I knew I was going to love. And as I got into it, I'm getting into the Prophet of Edan next month. That's the intention. Obviously, I'm reading a lot slower now than I had been in the last year due to writing. But that said, Philip Chase, The Way of Edan, this was a fantastic read. We get an exploration of, I don't know how much I can say without without spoilers. Let me just make sure I'm not going to say anything. All right, so there's religious stakes. There are again, world scale stakes in terms of characters getting involved into the mix of these things happening in the world. It's so hard to talk about this vaguely. This is so hard to talk about vaguely. There's epic battle scenes. If you're into epic battle scenes, there's deep character exploration. The prose is a modern spin on what a Tolkien sort of writing, Tolkien-esque style would be. I highly recommend reading this. I don't want to give anything away. There is some visceral, dark action in this. Again, something that I wasn't expecting. And I was pleasantly surprised because of what I enjoy in a story. So if you're looking for epic fantasy in absolutely fantastic and a world I want to explore more, pick up The Way of Edan. It is a trilogy. He's coming out with a second book, I believe, in the new year. He's coming out with he has 3 books already. He's coming out with a sequel standalone that will be out in the new year, 2025, I believe. So yes, please pick this up. It's a great book. Now, I'm going to show you All the Pretty Horses, but what I'm referencing is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Now, All the Pretty Horses, although I did enjoy it between the two, I thought The Road's exploration of father and son was something that spoke to me a bit more. And if you're looking for I'm going to put this down now that I said Cormac McCarthy. If you're looking for another post-apocalyptic world, I mean, between The Stand and that one, The Road just hit harder. It's shorter. It's punchier. The prose is definitely hard to envelop yourself in just because of Cormac's writing style. But the character, the father, the son carrying the flame, everything about it was absolutely enthralling. It was a book I didn't want to put down. And every time I did, I wanted to return to that dark, dark world for some strange reason. And I mean, I know the reason. It's being able to see a father and son, navigate as somebody who is, I'm not a father, but the character that is the father, seeing through his head, the eyes of having a son in this sort of like end of the world situation. and being able to try and keep his hope up, keep the fire alive. It was an absolute heart wrencher for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I highly recommend The Road to anybody who loves post-apocalyptic books. I understand the writing style can be a little bit difficult, but it's worth navigating through as you go through the story. If you have a hard time with Cormac McCarthy stuff, I find doing the Audible also helps. Just because the dialogue tags that he doesn't use, it makes it a lot easier to listen to the book than it does to actually physically read it. I physically read the Road. I listened to / read All the Pretty Horses together, and it made the experience of All the Pretty Horses that much better. At the next number, which I believe is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5, right? Yes, this is 5. So, Empire the Vampire. I did not get into the second book in this series just yet. That said, this book absolutely shocked me. If you're a follower of the channel, you know that this took me forever to read. And just for no other reason than it just took me forever. I didn't put the time aside. I was reading Malazan and a lot of Robin Hobb as I was going through this. So I finally pitched it out. I'm glad I did. This is one of my favorite story, like narrative structures in a book or any world really that happens in this book. And I'm not going to spoil what it is, but I do love the framing narrative that this uses of a man captured in prison, retelling the story to his captor and navigating 2 different timelines perfectly, honestly. The third book of this series comes out this year. I will be catching up with Empire of the Damned. Going into the new year, 2025, I will be finishing that because I want to catch up before the third book comes out. Now, number 4, this is Imperium by Robert Harris. This book was also an absolute. There's a lot of shockers on this book for me. We Are the Dead, Way of Edan, and Imperium. These are a few that I didn't expect to hit as hard as they did, and they absolutely did. Imperium is told in the first-person narrative by Cicero's slave, technically, who keeps record of Cicero's actions. I believe this is a trilogy. I do want to get into the rest of the series, but when I picked up this book, this is supposed to be the best in the 3. The person that I picked this up from Library of Alexandria said that this was his of the 3. This was the most memorable, or the only one worth reading. I don't know, something along those lines. I'm so enthralled with the story. I think I'm going to continue the series. But this book was absolutely amazing. The prose was beautiful. It was so easy to read, so easy to, again, not to put down. The paragraphs were long, but it just felt like watching a TV show, like a 45-minute TV show, where there's so much that happens in 45 minutes, and you're like, oh, it's only 45 minutes. That's the best way I can explain it. And there was little to no violence in this. And when I say that, I mean there is violence referred to, but it's Cicero's navigation of what that violence entails in the political space. It takes place in ancient Rome, and it is loosely based on history, and there are some things that have happened and things that have not. And Robert Harris does a good job in his foreword of explaining that, and leaving it up to the speculation of the reader. I love that book. It was a total surprise for me. I do love a historical fiction novel, and that one was the top historical fiction I read this year easily. Now, number 4, we have, oh gosh, it's ruining my plan. You guys aren't supposed to see this. Hold on, let me move this. Okay, we have A Worn Ruin by Ryan Cahill. This can kill somebody very easily, I think. If you drop this on your face while you're reading at night, you might, who knows. A Worn Ruin was absolutely phenomenal. Ryan Cahill improved book after book, and I know that is the common thread of thinking with his writing and the story and how everything has gone. I enjoyed Of Darkness and Light, the second book in the series. I enjoyed The Exile, I think the most of the books I read preceding this one. And then this one happened. And I mean, epic. Again, one of those books I don't want to spoil too much. There's 2 other books before this one, and getting into this one, spoiling even a little bit. Let's just say my favorite characters become even more of my favorite characters that I wasn't so crazy about in the previous books. I grow crazy about them in this one. This one really tied it all together. If you are in the middle of the Bound of the Broken series, please continue. Of Worn Ruin is totally worth the journey on its own. And then he just finished drafting the 4th book of Empires and Dust, I think like literally 2 days ago or yesterday from me posting this video. And yeah, this is absolute surprise. Again, scale is insanely epic. Please go pick it up. Also, great book. And now my top 3. We're in the top 3, guys. And I read other books in the series this year, and we're going with Assassin's Apprentice. Sorry, I got to figure this out. Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I'm currently reading Assassin's Quest, right? That's the third book in the Farseer trilogy. And I also read Royal Assassin after reading this one. And I read all of them this year. This one edges out Royal Assassin just barely, mostly because of the ending of this one. If you know, you know. There is an emotional hit at the end of this one that just really took me for a tailspin. And it happens something similar happens at the end of the second one or the third one. But it really comes down to the spacing and pacing of each of these books. This one to me had it felt the most evenly paced compared to the rest of them. There is some slow parts in this, even though it's a shorter book, but they end up tying all together really well. And this one just really topped the charts for me. We get the beginning of Fitz's journey. We get to meet all the characters that I have 200 pages left in the third book now in this trilogy, and everything just gets expanded upon. And I cannot wait to finish it. I can't wait to continue in the realm of the Elderlings. Robin Hobb's prose is absolutely beautiful. And everything that she has worked on in this world seems and feels so fleshed out and so real. It feels like a history book almost of a world that we didn't live in, you know. And I think that's a really good way to sum up Assassin's Apprentice and the Farseer trilogy so far for me. Now, if you know my top 10 in general, this is going to be no surprise for you guys. We're in the middle of my Malazan read. Just finished Midnight Tides this year, and yes, that is number 2, Midnight Tides by Steven Erikson. Steven Erikson is my favorite author, probably. And I say probably because there's a lot of competition. Like any given day, you can give me somebody else. But Steven Erikson really ties together the emotional notes. He really hits home when discussing compassion through violence, through aggression, and just really his characterization is done so dang well. And in Midnight Tides, we get kind of a telling of a story that is being told in the previous book, House of Chains. And it is a traditional Shakespearean tragedy. And it is written so dang well. And the take on it, the spin on it, it's so original. And the things that you can play with in a fantasy world, Steven Erikson does not hold back. He plays with all of them. And if you were thinking about getting into Malazan, I highly recommend it. Don't be intimidated by it, as people in the sphere of books on the tubes would say that you should be. It is absolutely worth going along for the ride. If you get through a couple books or 3, I say 3 books. That's what usually everybody says. Gardens of the Moon, Dead House Gates, Memories of Ice, House of Chains, Midnight Tides was worth all of that. And I loved all those books. My favorite book is ever, and not just 2024, is inside of that that group of 4. This one at the 5th book in the series. And I also read Knight of Knives, which is an E&C Esselmont book, which I'll mention honorably because it is not Steven Erikson who wrote it. I also love that. The atmosphere, everything that story built up, which is a prequel before the first book in the series. It all stems, and Malazan itself as a universe is absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend. It's epic fantasy at its epicest, and it's one of the bigger inspirations to my writing. And now we're going to Ashes of Man, my number 1 book of 2024. Now, I say now a lot. I'm saying now a lot. I read Kingdoms of Death this year. I believe I finished Demon in White coming into 2024. But of the Sun Eater books I read this year, Demon in White, Kingdoms of Death, and Ashes of Man. This might come as a surprise to everybody. Ashes of Man just edged out all the other ones. It just did. There was just that ending, that thing that we've been building up to that Christopher Ruocchio says, what if becoming Darth Vader was the right choice? We get that moment in this book. And it is a pinnacle of darkness that leads to this. It all makes sense. And it's the 5th book in the series. I can't wait to get into Disquiet Gods this coming month. I believe January. I'm going to see Christopher Ruocchio at MarsCon in January 19th or something in Virginia Beach, and I'm looking forward to seeing him there. And yeah, he's also, him and Steven Erikson, and Joe Abercrombie, Tad Williams. There's so many authors that are my favorites. Christopher Ruocchio does such a good job with Hadrian Marlowe up to this point, and I think it being the most recent book in the series that I have read, and seeing Hadrian Marlowe's journey and his transformation, whether it's good or bad, it has been an absolute journey for me to take with this character, and I feel like I'm getting it it's told in first person, and I'm literally you feel like you're experiencing these things with him as he's recording this history. And yes, so Ashes of Man really stands out amongst the books that I read in Sun Eater this year. Although everybody will say Demon in White. As much as I love Demon in White, as much as I love Kingdoms of Death, Ashes of Man, an unpopular opinion, is my favorite Sun Eater read of 2024. Now that that's out of the way, right? Thank you guys so much for coming. If you're here just for the top 10, I'm going to do a quick 5-minute talk about my writing, because there are people who come into my channel every week to listen to writing updates as well. If they don't, this is also for me. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe. If there are things that you think should go on a top 10 list in the future, I see Black Leopard, Red Wolf here I haven't read. And then I'm going to get into the rest of the Last War trilogy in 2025. I'm going to read The Empire of the Damned. There's so many books to read. I'm going to read Prophet of Edan. I'm looking forward to so many books in 2025. 2024 was a good year for me in terms of reading. I can't tell you how many books I read. I think I'm going to do a better job of tracking it between January 2025 and the end of December of 2025 this coming year, now that I'm doing, I'm kind of journaling it for myself with these videos. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're here for my writing updates, I'm going to get into that right now. All right. So guys, book 1, I gave to my editor at 235,000 words. I got it back probably 3 days ago. And after a few days of work, also developing a short story and getting feedback from that and working on that and now getting it proofread, I am working on the manuscript of book 1. I have already cut back from 235 to 221,000 words. And I am really happy with the feedback that I got. I felt like I got a 4, and I've said this over and over again. So if there are people who are watching this that I've said this to, then you would know. It felt like I got a master's course lecture of writing in general, let alone fantasy and my book specifically that Dave sent me. And Dave Butler, my editor. And I didn't know what to expect from a developmental edit. And this is my first time going through the process, and it feels very freeing to kind of get an objective lens on it and being able to be okay, let me pull myself out of the story and look at it for what it is and make it better and better. And I feel like with the notes that he gave me, I'm able to go in with this clear head, this clear conscience. I'm going to work on it after this and see how much more I cut today. But we're already down 15,000 words from, or whatever, what I said, 235 to 221,000. And so it feels really good. The feedback we got, there's about a net 50,000 word loss that I should be getting from this run through with Dave. And I'm really hoping to make the story more concise for everybody. And then it's going to go to a copy editor. But first we have one more round of edits after I'm done going through the manuscript. But that's where I'm at, guys. That's where I'm at. And I wanted to make sure I kept up with my weekly updates and didn't leave you guys on, even though, whatever. I figured I'd mention that in this video, even though it's a top 10. If you skip to this part, cool. Thank you. Grateful. And yeah, we'll see going into 2025 how my reading is, what I will be reading. I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to the next January and February. And then as far as writing goes, I'm looking forward to releasing a short story. I'm looking forward to releasing my Dear Reader essay to the Patreon, the free Patreon that I will be putting up in January 1st with the cover reveal of my book. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you've already seen a sneak peek, this 3-photo grid thing that I did on Instagram that, it's supposed to be really cool. And so far there's 3 pictures that have been released. The bottom of the page of the book cover, you guys can go see that on my Instagram. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next week. It's Christmas week next week. I will be on a holiday, but I come back the 26th, which is a Thursday, which means I should be able to record another update for you guys. And with the amount of time I'm going to have over the next 6 days, hopefully with the writing, there's a lot for me to update you on. I should be finishing, for those of you following along my reading, I should be finishing Assassin's Quest next week as well. I'm at the 81% mark in that book, and I'm looking forward to finishing it, loving where that journey has headed, has brought me so far. A lot of the fantastical elements of that story are now coming out, and it's really cool to see. But anyways, I'm going to stop blabbering. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next week.